So we've had two stories this weekend that both raise questions about whether our police force have got their priorities right. 6 police officers turned up to a house to arrest parents for messages shared in a WhatsApp group chat criticising their daughter's school. And today, the Sunday Times has revealed that 20 officers smashed down the door of a Quaker church to arrest women eating hummus and breadsticks while discussing climate change and Gaza. Natalie, coming to you first. Have the police got their priorities in order at the moment?
Well, I think very obviously what happened at the Quaker meeting house in London was absolutely dreadful, and I'm receiving many messages about that. Quakers are known for their pacifism. This was a meeting house that was also hosting counselling sessions, was also hosting a life drawing class, and people were absolutely terrified. And this is equivalent, really, roughly parallel to basically smashing into Westminster Abbey. And this is something that hasn't happened in a Quaker meeting house in recorded history. You know, we're going back to Civil War period before we saw similar things happening. So I think there's a problem with the police here, but I think there's also a problem with the law in that we saw under the previous Conservative government extremely repressive anti-protest legislation. And it's something that Jenny Jones, my fellow Green peer, and myself will be working on. The Labour Party in opposition voted against some of that law and is not currently taking the advantage to repeal it. We'll certainly be working to repeal that. So, you know, I think there's issues with the police, but there's also issues with the way in which the law was shaped under the previous government.
Paul, would you like to defend that anti-protest legislation which the government introduced?
Yeah, I mean, you know, with that kind of legislation, it's important that the police show restraint and responsibility. It's difficult to, look at the single article and work out exactly what intelligence the police were going on here, because they appear to be looking at trying to preempt a protest that was due to shut down London. And we've seen the other side of that with Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, the end result and the chaos and the cost that causes. But it's seemingly that they've got their, used a disproportionate amount of force and approach in this. It's difficult to really drag that out of that single article.
I mean, I have to say, we don't know what these women were planning in terms of their sit-down protest, but it's hard to imagine that women in a Quaker church, I think 6 women who were arrested, were going to plan anything on the scale of what Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil did in London, surely.
You could have half a dozen women that are standing on top of a gantry on a motorway who then cause a day's disruption and then go to prison for quite a long time for it. I mean, it's unlikely, but we have seen old ladies that have gone to prison for disruption. We've seen people that are seemingly peaceful. I'm not saying that these women are or not. As I say, it's difficult to drag the information out of that single article, but the police must have acted on some intelligence. Well, I hope they have, frankly. Otherwise, it's totally out of order.
Natalie, do you think that there is something in this, that police were maybe trying to nip problems in the bud and prevent something becoming an issue down the line? As Paul said, perhaps these women might have been, going to take over a gantry on a motorway. I mean, to use a medical metaphor here, if they're using prevention rather than cure, isn't that always cheaper and a bit more effective than dealing with, the sort of issues that we're dealing with, Extinction Rebellion protesters on trains shutting down the underground network, things like that?
Well, I think we go back to the fact that non-violent direct action has always been part of our political system. The obvious example is the suffragettes, of course, but I've been involved in supporting anti-fracking protests in Sheffield, the protesters trying to save and effectively, in the end, saving Sheffield street trees. People protesting is a part of our democracy. It's an important part of the way in which governments who are on the right track get directed towards the right track, hear the strength of public feeling, public emotion. We have a huge problem with people not being listened to, people feeling frustrated with our politics, and repression is not the answer.
I'm trying to imagine what would happen now if the suffragettes were taking direct action now. If you were standing on race courses, jumping under horses, I think it would be a very different circumstance, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think that they had a very rough time too, but it's worth saying, the suffragettes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's speak now to Paul Parker, who is a recording clerk for Quakers in Britain, a senior staff member for the religious group. Morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Thank you for being with us. So first of all, can you just talk us through what happened? These women were sitting, meeting, and then what happened?
So this was at Westminster Quaker Meeting House, which is in the West End of London, and a group of around 20 police, some of them armed with tasers, forced entry to the building, searched the building from top to bottom and arrested the 6 young women, as you've said. And this is obviously extremely disruptive. It's a calm, reflective space. It's used for Quaker meetings for worship, which are held in stillness. It's used by a wide range of community groups. And so this was a real intrusion into a space that's very precious to Quakers.
This wasn't a religious meeting, though.
No, that's right. The building's used by a wide range of community groups that are committed to peace, to equality, to integrity. We believe very strongly that it's important that people can meet and can share their concerns and can, where they feel they need to, that they can act on them.
And this hasn't happened before in a Quaker meeting house, that the police have essentially broken down a door and come and arrested people?
Certainly not in modern times. Back in the 17th century, when being a Quaker was illegal, this sort of thing used to happen a lot. But in modern times, it's the only time we can think of where anything like this has happened. It's really a very extreme example of policing and completely unnecessary.
The Met Police have said that these women were arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. Amid fears that there was going to be a sit-down protest in the capital, Youth Demand, their group, had stated an intention to shut down London over the coming month. Do you think that is reasonable grounds for the police to intervene in this situation?
Well, it doesn't sound like it to me, because of the situation that we saw was a small group of people attending what was billed as a welcome meeting. And as far as we can see, that was an entirely peaceful event, a small group of people sharing their concerns. This is part of a much wider pattern of really quite repressive policing and a suppression of people's right to gather, to share concerns, to express dissent when they feel they have no other option. And I think we have to be really careful not to allow the state to intervene between people and their consciences. These are clearly people who want to bring about a positive change in the world, and why shouldn't they be able to do that? I don't think any of us want to live in a country where police break into a place of worship and take people away who are sharing concerns about really legitimate problems in the world that need to be discussed.
Would you say it would be fair to say this is the equivalent of police breaking into a church hall that had been rented out to a group? Is that a fair equivalence?
Well, Quakers don't really have sacred spaces, but the community of Quakers in Westminster had worked very hard to make something that felt, I think, like a place of sanctuary, a place of safety in the busyness of the West End. And I think many of their building users experience it as a calm, tranquil, reflective space. And so the impact of this really will be that people don't feel as safe there as they're used to. So the fact that it's a place of worship is significant, but it's not the main problem here. The issue is that I think ordinary people now have to worry about whether really ordinary activities are being criminalised and maybe policed in this kind of repressive way.
We heard in the introduction that last year the group was responsible for spraying the Ministry of Defence with red paint. 3 of its activists were found guilty of public order offences in April after a demonstration outside Sir Keir Starmer's home in North London. Some people would say that the police were trying to stop further disruptive direct action in London. We talked a little bit earlier on about, we've seen campaign groups in the past, for example, climbing across the gantries on the M25, bringing the M25 to a halt, causing huge disruption to people's lives, potentially putting people's lives at risk if they're trying to get to a hospital or whatever. What do you think that the police should have done? Because they had a suspicion that these women were planning to bring London to a halt. What would you say the police should have done to if they had these concerns about these women trying to bring London to a standstill?
Well, I think there's 2 things here. The first is that we have to make sure that people have a proper outlet for their concerns where they feel they're actually being heard. And it's clear when people take these more extreme forms of non-violent protest, and they are still non-violent, that it's because they feel that their concerns aren't being heard. And I think we can see that some of the issues that these groups are raising around climate change, around the situation in Israel and Palestine, the government doesn't appear to be hearing their concerns and acting on them. I also think it's worth saying that arresting people preemptively in the way that the police are doing is not going to make this kind of disruption to people's lives any less likely. We're seeing people here who are following a strong sense of the need to act according to their conscience, and I think it's utterly inappropriate for policing to happen in the way that we've been describing.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us this morning.
You're welcome.
That is Paul Parker. He is recording clerk for Quakers in Britain, a senior staff member for the religious group. So it's really interesting. I mean, Paul said there, this is repressive policing. It's the suppression of people's right to gather. And he says arresting people preemptively is not the right way. And makes the interesting point that just by arresting these people, if this is something that they feel passionately about, is that going to stop them going ahead with their plans? Interested to get your thoughts on this morning. Jenny's got in touch saying where people are plotting civil disobedience, police intervention is justified. Such disruption can cause real damage to others. However, the intention is everything. It doesn't matter where the plotting takes place. Your thoughts welcome on this. Do you think this is police overreach, or do you think in light of what these women were suspected of doing, of plotting to bring London to a standstill, is that justified for the police to act in this way? Is 20 police officers too much? Should they have bashed down the door? Could they have approached this in a different way?